Okay, we're live. You and your giant red coffee cup. That's great.
Let's do it.
All right, so here I got my giant teacup. Here we go. Ah, all right.
Caffeine.
So it's great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the live stream. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your audio sounds really good. So yeah, this is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about buy-in through the govern function in the NIST cybersecurity frameworks, right? So we're going to look at the govern function so that we can understand it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to look at um, how one of our customers, who shall remain nameless, how they use the govern function to increase buy-in, and then I'm going to give everybody a tool so they can do it for themselves.
Okay, so are you going to have my contact information on a banner?
Yeah, when it's time for that.
Okay, great. And I might go ahead and myself during when I can, just so because everything's picking up background.
Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. That's a wise idea. Okay. And let's see if I could just get my final configuration going here. Okay. Yep. There we go. I got it. All right. Now we're going to go live here. Oh, in a few minutes. Let me just make sure I got all my settings correct. Yep. Get that lotion on your hands.
Yeah, and now
Can't do it with dry hands.
no, with how hot it's been, it's been really dry.
Yeah, it has been. Okay. Oh, how interesting. I just noticed I have settings. I can actually do some of your settings. Of course, I'm not going to, but I just figured that out. Okay, and then there's the chat and the comments. Lisa, I think it's going to take a while for me to get like fully used to this StreamYard software. It's like a headspace thing. It's like just remembering all the things that it can do. Okay.
Right. I'd like to get rid of this on next time.
Hey, look at that. Yay. I feel like a newscaster in this view. It's kind of cool. Yeah, there we go. Yep, so we're going to help people get buy-in because that lets you get traction with your program.
Right. You don't get anywhere with that. It's such a universal one.
Yep.
Every level of professional has trouble with this.
Yeah, it's just a recurring theme everywhere, really, in the teaching that we do, the customer work that we do. Yeah, it just comes up over and over again.
Mm.
All right, we got about a minute to go. Now, there's a countdown capability in this somewhere. I used it once before.
Yeah, you did. I remember.
So where in the world is it? Oh. I think I might figure. I figured it out. There we go. again, just like got to learn how this works. See, I realized I could make a look and feel for when we do these live streams, and I could make a second different look and feel for when Jake and I do our podcast recording. And I just
Oh,
realized I had the podcast look and feel selected. Oh man. Okay, let's do the countdown. Let's do this. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the live stream. Great to have you with us. And I'm Kip Boyle. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Cyber Risk Opportunities, which is a company that I founded 10 years ago. And this is Lisa Shaw. She is our Executive Director here at CRO. And yeah, so Lisa and I were at the local ISSA meeting last night. That was good. I'm glad we went and did that.
yes. You know, we've been to the 3 or 4 times that I was telling you last night, it already feels like home.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, everything's. We're starting to see like familiar faces, and when we walk in, it's not exactly like Cheers, right?
Well, there was beer last night.
There was beer for the first time that I remember,
Yeah.
and that was pretty cool because didn't they say it was like the 25th anniversary of the chapter? So I guess it started in 2000. So
Right.
great. All right. So what are we gonna do today? Well, let's talk about that. All right. There we go. As I continue to learn how to operate StreamYard. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about buy-in, and we're going to do it with respect to the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is something that we've been working with now for a long time, probably 8 years, and we've been doing a lot of work in the field, talking to customers about becoming more cyber resilient and building for them a cyber risk management action plan, or a CR map as we call it. And so today we're going to take an example, and we've actually shared this example in a previous live stream, but it's going to come back a little bit, but we're going to look at it in a slightly different way. The last time we looked at it, it was really in the context of education, training, and awareness. But today we're going to talk about it from the perspective of getting buy-in. So now, if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and put those into the chat, and Lisa will be watching to see the questions that you're asking, and because I'm going to be so busy sharing this cool information with you that I may not see it. So, but Lisa's going to make sure that I don't get too far down the road without answering a question that you have. And then also, we're gonna have something free for you after we're done today. You're gonna be able to take away everything really that we've talked about. And what I'm going to show you that we did today, well, I want you to be able to do it too. So we're going to give you the information that you need so that you can do that. So we're glad that you're here. Really appreciate the time that you're spending with us. Okay. Now, what's great about buy-in? Well, you can do all kinds of things with buy-in that you can't do without it, or is extremely difficult, right? So when you have buy-in, people in the organization follow your policies, right? If you say use multi-factor authentication, they do. Rather than trying to figure out a way to not use it or to work around that control by maybe using a different email system or whatever, right? So buy-in is fantastic when you get it across the organization. And if your senior decision makers have bought into your program, then that's going to be a good thing for you, because then if you make a budget request, they'll take it seriously. Doesn't mean they're always going to say yes, right? And when the board of directors says, "Hey, what are we doing for cybersecurity?" Um, you're going to get support as you answer that question, right? And hopefully, if there's a really awful thing that happens, a ransomware attack or a distributed denial of service attack against you or something like that, you as the security leader are not going to get hung out to dry, because that buy-in is going to help people realize that it's not your fault, right? That everybody's in it together. You're playing a pivotal role, but it's not all your fault. Okay, cool. So I want to put on the screen Lisa's email address. So there it is. There's Lisa's email address. That's a kind of a fun looking @ symbol. I haven't seen anything quite like that before. Anyway, so that's Lisa's email address. Now, the reason why I'm putting it on there is because if you want to ask a question, but you don't want to do it in the chat, and then later on, when I describe the buy-in starter kit that you can request, you'll want to ask Lisa. You'll want to send her an email and say, "I saw the live stream. I'd love to get the buy-in starter kit," and then we'll share that with you. Okay, so take a screenshot of it. I'll put Lisa's email address back on the screen later on. Okay, so let's get into it. So let's talk about govern. Like what is govern? Let me just operate the slides here. So first of all, let's remember that in the NIST cybersecurity framework, there's 6 functions, and here they are on the screen. And in version 2, we got a new function that we didn't have before. This one's called govern. And govern, because it's sort of in the center there, it is visually telling us that govern is something you do all the time. Now, the other 5 functions, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, now those really represent the life cycle of an incident. And so you may be doing one of those functions at any given time, but more than likely you're doing several of them at different times, right? You might be working on trying to respond to an alert, like what is this thing? You might be deploying some controls that would be out of the protect function. Maybe you're triaging an alert. You could be actually responding to something, or you could be recovering from something. And all of that stuff can happen contemporaneously, right? But the govern bit is meant to be something that that is always present in each one of those functions whenever you're operating inside of it. So okay, so it's kind of our big context, right? Now, govern is, again, just one of those 6 functions, and in the NIST cybersecurity framework, everything is represented by a code. At the function level, which is the top level of this 3-tiered hierarchy, everything has a 2-letter code, and GV is the govern code, right? Now, govern has a definition, and this is what it is. When you read the cybersecurity framework document, this is what it's going to tell you. And quite frankly, this is a bit stiff of a definition, but it's not as bad as I've seen in other frameworks, other control catalogs. This isn't so bad of a definition that you struggle to understand it. Now, within the govern function, we've got 6 activities, right? Now, for those of you who are very familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework, you might be thinking, there's no activities in there, Kip. They're categories and subcategories, and that's true. But if you want buy-in and you walk around talking to your senior decision makers about categories and subcategories, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. I don't recommend that you do that. What I think you should do is you should use language that is more familiar and that senior decision makers aren't going to find as a barrier to understanding what you're talking about. So please don't use those terms, category and subcategory. I prefer that you use activity for the 2nd level instead of category, and outcome instead of subcategory, which is the 3rd level in the hierarchy. All right, so now I'll get off that soapbox for a moment. There's 6 activities inside the govern function, and I want to step through them very quickly, and I want to demystify them because they need demystifying. All right. So organizational context is one of the activities, and I just did a copy and paste straight out of the framework into this box here about circumstances. But I don't find the definitions that pop right out of the document to be all that interesting or useful. So I've tried to simplify it. Right? If you're not a bank, don't manage cyber risk like you're a bank. Keep your goal for cyber risk management appropriate to the kind of organization you are. So if you're running a pizza restaurant, well, depending on how much automation you've put in there, you don't have to protect yourself to the same degree as you would if you were a bank, right? So that's all this activity is getting at. And beneath this activity in organizational context, as you're going to see later on, there are multiple outcomes underneath this that further allows you to contextualize what, are you doing a good job in this area? Okay, so that's one activity. Here's another one, risk management strategy, right? So it's just asking the question, do you have all this stuff here? Priorities, do you understand all these things? Well, let's decode that. Don't let your individual risk appetites and tolerances drive your risk management strategy. And we see this all the time where somebody shows up to work and maybe they work at an insurance company, which is a very conservative organization. Typically, they're going to have a low risk appetite and a low risk tolerance. But then somebody who goes skydiving on the weekend, is in a decision-making role in the insurance company, and rather than making risk decisions that are consistent with a conservative approach, maybe they do it according to their own risk appetite and risk tolerance, which, if you're jumping out of perfectly good airplanes all the time, you're probably an adrenaline junkie, and you probably like taking a lot of risk. You probably feel like like you can do anything, right? So that can create a mismatch. Anyway, this is just a common thing that we see. Let's look at roles, responsibilities, and authorities. This is the third activity, and let's just skip over this ciphertext, as I like to think of it, and just get right to the point. Everyone has role-appropriate cybersecurity responsibilities in their job descriptions, and they're enforced as performance expectations. And I have a long soapbox speech that I have about this, but I'm not going to give that to you all today. You can go back and you can watch one of the previous live streams that we did where I actually gave that soapbox speech. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we go on, right? So, and when I say everyone has role-appropriate cybersecurity responsibilities, I do mean everybody, not just cybersecurity people, not just technology people or executives. I mean people in human resources, people in accounts payable, that sort of thing. All right. Now, policy, no surprise, right, that this would be in the govern function. This is an activity. And what does it really mean? Well, I like to think of policy as guardrails, right? Telling people what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, what you can do, what you cannot do, unless you have like some crazy circumstance that you've encountered where you have to make an exception. But we have these policy guardrails for everyone. Nobody is exempted as a routine matter, and that they're established, communicated, and most importantly, enforced. Oversight. I think this is the fifth activity in the govern function. Let's just skip right to the plain text. Your experiences, as in your organizational experiences, your team's experiences managing cybersecurity risk is used to improve your risk management strategy. So this is like one of those virtuous cycles, right? It's a feedback loop is what this is getting at. And then the last activity in this function is cybersecurity supply chain risk management. And this is a biggie. It has a lot of activities it has a lot of outcomes, in this activity. And what is it? Well, it's about your third-party cyber risks, knowing them, mitigating them, knowing when you need to change your approach, because maybe some of the third parties that you're relying on are getting more attacked than they used to. And so you have to be more on guard, right? If you think about some of the big supply chain exploits that's happened in the last few years, I think you can begin to understand why this is so important. And you need to be ready to deal with failure. So what do you do if your payroll provider goes offline, right? And what if they're offline for a week, 2 weeks? How are you paying people? How are you paying your workforce? Are you prepared for this? And you really need to be. Okay. So that's an overview of the govern function, which we're going to use this function in order to increase buy-in. Lisa, you've been super respectful as I went ahead and went through this first bit. But did you have any thoughts that you wanted to add?
Yeah, can you go back to the previous script?
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Is it this one?
Yeah, I was in the be ready with failure.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that might look like? Because tabletop exercises jump mind for me, and maybe business continuity planning, trying to figure out the likely risks.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do there. So we're not going to talk about the respond and recover function of the framework today. However, that is going to be where you're going to find a lot of the guidance in the framework about being ready to deal with failure. All right. If you go back to a previous live stream, and it might have been the first live stream that we did, we went through a case study about this. Right. We talked about what what do you do? What's your business continuity plan? What's your disaster recovery plan? And we actually went through a set of tools that would help you discover what your biggest risks were in terms of being ready to deal with failure. And so anyway, don't want to repeat all of that, but you want to be thinking about stuff like RTO, recovery time objectives, and RPO, recovery point objectives. Anyway, I'm glad you brought it up because we did do a live stream all about that. Hey, and we've got a comment that just popped into my field of view. Aaron Johnson. Thanks, Aaron. Good content as always. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being here during our live stream today. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to pivot now into a second topic here, which is not, which is the case study, part 2. All right, let's do it. Okay, so here's the case study. So we're calling this organization Acme, but it's a real company that we worked with, and I want to focus in particular on the roles, responsibilities, and authorities activity inside the govern function. And you can see up here, GV is the 2-letter code for govern, and RR is the 2-letter code for this particular activity here, right? All right, so let's go ahead and look at the 4 outcomes in this activity. They're on the screen. Take a moment, just kind of like skim through this so you can get a good idea. I'm not going to unpack all of these like I did with the activities inside the govern function. So just take a moment. Okay, so I coughed. I'm going to get a sip of tea. Okay, so we got 4 items in there. Now, when we get to part 3 today, and I give you this toolkit that we use, it's kind of an excerpt of a bigger toolkit. I'll talk a little bit more about how you use these outcomes in order to get buy-in. But for the moment, I just want a context set. Right? These are the things that are inside the roles, responsibilities, and authorities activity. So let's keep going. Now, when I explain how you can do this work for yourself, I'm going to have a govern function readiness buy-in tool for you. You're going to be able to do this for yourself, but I want to show you how this worked for this customer, Acme. So when we used this buy-in tool with them, one of the things that we discovered was that they weren't doing very well in this area related to roles and responsibilities. And so when we were able to show that using the data that we'd gathered, well, that allowed us to have a really great conversation with the senior decision makers about how they felt from a risk management perspective about the idea that they didn't have the level of buy-in that they desired. Now, it also turned out that they were already kind of wrestling with this idea. They were already wondering to themselves, wow, I wonder how we could get more buy-in across the workforce. But they were hesitant. They didn't want to just start pushing a bunch of training out, especially if that training was not customized to who they were and how they operated. And so when we came back with the data that said, yeah, it's true, your folks are not as fully engaged in their roles and responsibilities as you'd like. However, we also discovered through this process that we went through that they would like to be more engaged, right? That they want to be trained. And so it was fantastic because, I felt like we really put, two groups together, these senior decision makers who wanted to give more training, but were kind of hesitant to do that. And then the individual contributors who were saying, please train us. And somehow they just weren't talking to each other before we showed up. So what did we do? Well, so we went ahead and created some training. But before we did that, we actually defined very specific roles and responsibilities. And as you can see here on the screen, we defined 3 levels of roles and responsibilities. And we went and retrieved all of the job descriptions. And we put them in these 3 different buckets, right? So people who had non-privileged system access as a bucket, and then a sub bucket of people who had access to customer data, and then a sub bucket of people who had level 3 and level 2 and were also in level 1, which is to say they had privileged access. So let me just show you, quickly show you how these 3 buckets were defined. And you can see that everybody went into level 3, right? Everybody was in bucket 3. If you worked for the company, you were in bucket 3, and you had ordinary access to systems and sensitive data. And there were 2 duties that we said everybody has to perform and that they would be managed to it as a performance expectation. So that first one there, they had to identify and report suspected phishing and all those other incidents. And in the training, we told them how to do it, and that they had to maintain basic cyber hygiene. So this is a broad-based expectation for everybody. And then that subset of people who also had access to customer data, you could see that we defined their job profile here in these 3 bullets at the top. And you can see that we actually called out some of the specific roles that fit into the level 2. And then we just added 1 duty, right? So they had the 2 from being a level 3 person, and then they got 1 more duty. And you can see it there, which is protecting customer data. And then we have this level 1, this privileged access. And you can see the job profile. We're talking about systems administrators. We're talking about high profile people who maybe didn't have systems administration capability, but maybe they could request money to be moved, right? And so they're more likely to be targeted by a spear phishing attack or something like that. And with high stakes, right? So if this person was targeted for exploitation, and if they were, then it could cause all kinds of real serious business problems. Got some roles down there, and then the duties. So people in level 1 had the most duties. They had the 2 duties from level 3. They had the 1 additional duty from level 2, and then they got even 1 more duty, which you can see here because they were in level 1. So we really piled it on for those folks. Now, once we had that all figured out, then we were able to make the training. We rolled out the training, and the reports that we got back is that the level of engagement, the level of buy-in went up, and people were really happy about this, believe it or not. I can't remember the last time somebody said, thank you for cybersecurity training. But that's kind of what happened, and the senior decision makers were pretty happy too. Lisa, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Did you want to add anything? Anything important that maybe I didn't mention?
I think when we delivered the information that the workforce wanted more cybersecurity training,
Yeah,
that just really thrilled senior leadership. Because that was, I remember the IT director really felt like it didn't, like nobody was engaged, nobody wanted to be engaged.
Yeah.
Everybody thought cybersecurity was his job and didn't really relate to it at all. So leadership was. I'm wondering though, Kim, I know that you have become more and more deep fakes,
Mm-hmm.
and do you anticipate that training for that specifically should be part of employee training as it becomes more and more?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to figure out what to do about deep fakes. I think it's an open question right now. What are we gonna do about deep fakes? Because, well, a couple of reasons. One is because the nature of a deep fake makes it really difficult to discern. Is this photo real? Is this voice real? Is this video real? Um, we already know that there was a $25 million scam that was perpetrated on an engineering company that was based in Hong Kong about 12, 18 months ago, kind of in that time frame. And that was a deep fake that also used Zoom, right? So somebody in the finance department attended a Zoom meeting that they thought was real, which wasn't. And the attackers did a good job of figuring out how to impersonate the chief financial officer and to get this person to move money. I mean, it all felt very real and very authentic. So that's one hurdle is how do we know? And then the second hurdle is, well, how do we take that know-how and put it into some kind of a tool, right? Some kind of a filtering tool, or I don't know, right? So that's all got to get figured out. In the meantime, we definitely need to start training people, and I think this is going to be less about technology as a solution, at least in the short term. And I think it's going to be more about people being really skeptical, really cynical about, hey, you're asking me to do something and this just does not sound normal. It doesn't sound right. I'm going to go verify what you're asking me to do. And people are going to have to be given permission to do that so that they feel like that if they don't do it, they'll get more in trouble than if they did do it. You know what I mean?
Aaron commented on the echo, and I'm so sorry, Aaron. I couldn't get rid of it from my end. Kip, does you hear it?
I don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry you do. I might be more this live stream.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for using your mute button more often. And I know that's not your favorite thing to do, and it's not my favorite thing to do either. Not for myself and not for you. I really enjoy having you here, and because you have great perspective, and I didn't even notice that Aaron had dropped that into the comments. I am not yet fully sorted out when it comes to doing a live stream and staying on top of the comments. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to get better at that. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to talk about this toolkit, this idea of get to the right slide. Here we go. So I want you to be able to do this. I want you to be able to take the govern function in the NIST cybersecurity framework, and I want you to be able to get these kinds of results. Now, depending on what you find out about your organization, you may or may not end up doing something that's related to training and education. I don't know. I just want to say that it's not required that you do. What's required is that you get in there and you do the work to figure out where's the gap and how can I plug that gap, and how can I do this all in a way that increases buy-in and not decreases buy-in, right? Because that's kind of what makes it worth doing. Okay, so I've got this awful eye chart. Let me blow this up on the screen. All right. So what I'm showing you here is something that is in the checklist. And let me get rid of the checklist, that little banner. There we go. All right, so what you're looking at, this table, this 3-column table. In the left column, that first column, is each of the activities in the govern function, right? And I showed you the list earlier, and you should recognize this. You should also recognize that the codes in there, right? You see where it says, like, for example, organizational context, gv.oc. The fact that there's a GV in there tells you that this is a govern function activity, right? You don't even have to see the word govern. You can just look at it, look at that code, and you can know that that's what it is. So here they are: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 activities in the govern function. Now, we actually took these statements and converted them into questions. And we did this because we found that if you want to talk to somebody, like a senior decision maker or whomever, and you want to talk to somebody about, hey, this is what the cybersecurity framework says, that we ought to do. Well, we found that it's much easier if you do it as a question, right? So instead of going in and just making a statement, go in and ask a question. It's just so much more human to ask a question, and people will respond. If you say, read the statement and tell me what you think, when in our experience, you just don't get as good of a result compared to asking a question. So what you see in the middle column is it's almost a direct copy and paste, except down there at the bottom, the supply chain risk management. So what we realized was, because there were so many outcomes in that activity, that we couldn't just do one question and cover everything. We needed 2 questions. So if you look in that far right column, right, you can see that we've got 6 activities and 7 questions that you can ask in order to find out where are the gaps in your organization and how can you plug those gaps in a way that's going to get you buy-in. Now, the reason why we focus on the govern function rather than protect, detect, respond, recover, identify, or any of the other ones is because if you're going to talk about govern, right, activities and outcomes in the govern function, well, that's good. You're going to want to talk to senior decision makers. And now you've got a perfectly valid reason to reach out to them and say, can I get some time with you? Can I get 30 minutes, 45 minutes of time with you? I need to ask you some questions about cybersecurity. So I've got the questions, can I just have some of your time? So a lot of us struggle to connect with senior decision makers, in part because we don't know what to talk with them about, right? And it seems like it's like sometimes it can be a problem to figure out, well, how do I even start that conversation? So here's one of the great things about this approach is I'm giving you, I want to say a pickup line, but that's that's not exactly what I'm going for here. But these questions, right, will help you, I think, reach out and start that conversation. So that's kind of the point of this particular slide here, okay? And I know that's an eye chart, but remember, after we're done here, you can send Lisa Shaw an email, and she'll send this to you so you can use these questions, all right? Now, what we find is that while it's great to hear somebody narrate, geez, Kip, you asked me about organizational context. Let me tell you, let me give you a 5-minute response. Nothing wrong with that. But what we find is that if we can also get a number, a score for how that person feels about it, well, that opens up so much more opportunity to do some data analysis, some lightweight statistics, and to understand what's really going on. So, for example, it's perfectly valid for you to pick one senior decision maker and take those questions and go talk to them. But why not 6? Why not find 6 senior decision makers and go talk to each one of them and take notes about what they say to you, but also ask them for a score. And if you want to do that, we've got a scoring system right here. So let me just put this on the screen. So we score from 0 to 10. And as you can see here, what that really means is that there's 3 states of security. There's too little, which is 0 through 4. There's the right amount, which is a green zone between 5 and 8. And then there's the case where it's like we're going crazy. It's excessive. And sometimes we do hear people say, hey, we're doing too much here and we can't get our work done. So we love to use this scoring system. So if I was talking with the senior decision maker about and asking one of the questions, after they, narrated a little bit, I might say, so where do you think we are on a number scale? And I would show them this. I wouldn't show them this. I'd show them this. This is a scorecard that breaks out the 0 through 10 scale and puts a definition, right? So if you asked me, like, hey, do we have our risk tolerance, published so people could read it, and our risk appetite? Well, I would look at this and I'd say, all right, let me think here. Our organization rarely or never does this, which is to say, publish our risk tolerance and risk appetite statement. Well, if that was true, then I'd say, well, we're 0. We've never done that before. Let's say we have done it. Then I would go down to the next line, and then I would read that statement. And if that was a good description of who we were, I'd say 3. And I hope you can see how this works, right? You just keep reading down until you find a description that matches what you do. And maybe the real answer is somewhere in between, which is fine. People can say, well, we're a 2 because I know we're better than a 0, but we're not as good as a 3. All right, so that's how this works here. Now, if you take the questions, you get your list of senior decision makers, and then you bring your scorecard with you. Now this gets really powerful. And not only are you going to get all this great narrative response, but you're going to be able to get these numbers. And then you can put these numbers into a spreadsheet, and you can look at them, and you can say, all right, how many times did the 6 people I interviewed, how many times did they say, I don't know, in response to a question? Or how many times did they say, we're a 5? How many times did they say we were a 3? How many times did 0 come up, right? How many times did one senior decision maker say we were 0, but another senior decision maker said we were a 5? In other words, one of them says, like, we're totally out to lunch on that, but then somebody else said, no, we're good. Like, we have a minimally acceptable amount of security. This is really helpful to actually get this into data, because now you can actually do something and have some data that tells you what you ought to be doing. So so when you get the slides from Lisa, it's going to have a kind of a 0, a focus on what a 0 means, what a 3 means, what a 5 means. Okay? So that's what you're going to do. You're going to list out your senior decision makers. You're going to take this set of questions right over here in this column, and you might want to reword them a little bit, okay, so that they fit your context. If you're in critical infrastructure, you can ask these questions in a slightly different way than if you worked at an entertainment company, for example, which isn't in critical infrastructure, right? And you can add maybe some organization-specific terms. Maybe you could talk about specific policies that you have that that are important, or specific internal structures, lines of business, that sort of thing. Customize it, make it your own. But get the scorecard, and go talk to people and bring that data back to you so you can figure out for yourselves, as Acme did, right? We worked with Acme, and Acme figured out, hey, we got to do something here with roles and responsibilities, and we have to train people. Maybe you'll find something different, right? Maybe you'll find that, let's pick something here, right? Supply chain, cybersecurity, supply chain risk management. Maybe you'll figure out that you really don't have much to offer there. Okay, great. Grab that, go back to the senior decision makers and say, hey, I've looked at everything y'all have said to us, and this is coming through loud and clear. Everybody's concerned about our ability to do good cybersecurity supply chain risk management. Can we talk about using the NIST cybersecurity framework's outcomes? Can we talk about upping our game? And when you do that, you're getting buy-in, because the executives, the senior decision makers, they feel like you listened to them. They were heard by you. And when you go back to them and say, yeah, I talked to 5 other people, and all 6 of you say that this is an issue, now you're starting to get buy-in at the senior level. And once you have that, you can leverage it and turn it into buy-in at the organization level, because now you're going to have to go talk to the people who actually work with the vendors, with the third parties. And you're going to have to say to them, we have a problem here. will you please help us do a better job? Here's our idea for what that would look like, and get them to help you. Now you got buy-in all over the place, right? So I hope this makes sense. And if you have any questions about what I've shared with you so far, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer those questions. Lisa, I know you got a really bad echo going on, but did you maybe you could put your thoughts in the comments? I don't know. Still getting used to the StreamYard stuff. Okay, let me go ahead and put Lisa's email address on the screen again. If you haven't written it down, if you haven't screenshot it yet, go ahead and do that now. Because what I want to do next is I want to show you the toolkit. All right. So I want to show you the toolkit. I want to show you what you can get from Lisa when you just send her a quick note. All right. All right, so when you send her a quick note, what she's going to send to you in response is a PDF version of all these slides that I've shown on the screen today, plus a couple of more that I'm going to share with you before we wrap up. And if you want to talk with me about, I heard the live stream, I watched the replay, but I still have a couple of questions, I'm happy to give you 30 minutes of my time for free, and all you need to do is just reach out to Lisa and ask her, hey, I was in the live stream. You sent me the toolkit. Now can I get some time with Kip? Because I've got a couple of questions, and I'd be happy to do that with you. All right. So let's go ahead, and I want to share a couple of more things with you that I think are going to be very helpful. Some resources. Now, this topic of buy-in. One of the things that I haven't mentioned yet is I've sort of assumed a happy path for you, haven't I, right? That you're going to reach out, you're going to, ask for time on the executive calendars, they're going to give it to you, you're going to ask questions, and everyone's going to be completely cooperative. And then later on, you're going to come back and say, we should do something more about this, and everyone's going to go, oh, yes, you're right, we should do something more about this, right? Happy path. Nobody ever gets the full happy path. So maybe you're going to encounter some resistance. That's likely. Now, if you don't really have a lot of experience dealing with objections, people saying, oh, well, just because everybody says it's a problem doesn't mean we have to do anything about it, right? Well, that's an objection. That's somebody, trying to stop you from taking your good idea, which you figured out by going and talking to people and gathering data and telling you that you need to sit down and you need to, keep coloring within the lines. So this is a wonderful book, and I want to recommend it to you. This is called, oddly enough, it's called Buy-In, Saving Your Good Idea from Getting Shot Down. Now, this book has nothing to do with cybersecurity. But John Cotter, who's the primary author of this book, is known as an organizational change management expert. So if you want to learn more about how do you deal with people who try to stop you from doing good work, right? Read this book. And there are generic attack strategies, right? So John Cotter figured out that there's 24 different types of attack strategies, and just about anything that anybody would attack you with, it's going to fit into one of those 24 buckets. And this book gives you responses to each one of those. It tells you how to deal with those objections, those attacks sometimes, right? And he even says, look, if you want buy-in, you should actually invite people to criticize you. Because when that happens, they're giving you something valuable, which is attention. They're paying attention to you. And anyway, this is a wonderful book. It's been out for about 10, 15 years, something like that. And I really recommend it to people who are struggling with this, okay? So go get it, go read it. Part 1 is a story. It's kind of like a business fable of, where a guy has a good idea and he encounters all these people trying to shoot it down. And then part 2 of the book decomposes the story and actually lays it all out. Now, for an analyzer, which is kind of what I am, right? This is fantastic. I love it. Deconstructs everything, makes everything understandable. So recommend this book. I don't get anything There's no money in it for me if you buy this book. I just want you to know that it's available. Okay, now let's talk about something that's not directly related to the topic today, but is kind of indirectly related, which is this idea that we're all overwhelmed with tasks, and it's like an ongoing problem, right? I know I always have more work to do than I have time to do it. And we've got artificial intelligence also coming down the pike. Yeah. So we've got these two problems at the same time. How do I, get on top of my workload? How do I make sure that I'm doing what's most important? And how do I deal with the fact that artificial intelligence is like looking over my shoulder? It just kind of feels like, is it going to take my job? I don't know what to do. So I put these two things together, and I'm going to be running a free training, and it's going to happen on Wednesday, August 13th, and it's going to be for about 45 minutes. It's going to start at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So, what I'm going to teach you is I'm going to teach you a very simple technique that you can do every week. It takes about 15, 30 minutes maybe. Probably 30 minutes when you first start doing it, but I think as you get more experience, it'll kind of, drop to about 15 minutes, and it's going to help you get time back in your week. Time that you can use for the stuff that's most important, like taking this toolkit that I've shared with you today and going and making a difference in your organization, getting that buy-in up where you need it to be. All right. So, and I'm doing this on a website called Maven, and this is the URL. So if you want to go to this, here's the URL. This is a god-awful URL. I wish I had I wish they would give shorter URLs. I thought about using a link shortener, but then I was like, why in the world would anybody want to click on a link shortener, right? Who knows where that's going to take you? This Kip guy can't be trusted. Not going to click on that. So anyway, I just put the whole thing out here. Now you can screen grab this and go check out the session and see if it makes sense for you. Listen, do me a favor. Even if you don't want to come to the session, if you wouldn't mind signing up anyway, because Maven, this website that I'm going to do this at, they have like a threshold. If I can get 50 people signed up for this, that kind of tickles their algorithm, and it makes them promote it more to their audience, and I would like that. So if you wouldn't mind helping me out with that, I'd really appreciate it. That would be great. Okay, so we don't need to show that anymore. Let's get rid of that. And Lisa, thank you. I just noticed that you gave me a private chat. And so Lisa wanted to ask a question. So we have a few more minutes. Let's go back to Lisa's questions. She said, I know some of the questions were asking several things, up to 5. How do you handle that scoring wise? Oh, that's an awesome question. Let me roll back to the question set here. Okay. And you're right. So let's take a look at like this one here, roles, responsibilities, and authorities. How well does your organization establish and communicate roles, responsibilities, and authorities to foster accountability, performance assessment, and continuous improvement? I just about ran out of breath just saying that. That's a lot. Okay, well, and so Lisa's asking a great question. It's like, how can you get one score on that? Well, you probably can't, to be honest with you. Which, so what I would do is I would listen to the narrative. Right, I would let the senior decision maker talk to me about any and every aspect of that. And if they leave an aspect out, I'd probably say, "What about performance assessment? What about continuous improvement? Do we have a way to do that?" And you might want to score each one of those individually for yourself. Okay. Now, when we do this as part of our paid work, we don't ask one question. We actually break those out into separate questions. And so when we talk with people, it takes a lot longer of a time to do it because we use so many questions. But I was figuring that you might not be ready for that level of detail, right? Like, hey, senior decision maker that I've never talked to before, can I come and ask you 100 questions? That may not work. But can I come and ask you 7 questions? That sounds more doable. What do you think, Lisa? Is that a reasonable strategy? You can just give me a thumbs up. Oh, perfect. Lisa thinks that's totally doable. Okay, so Omar, I'm all in for the Reclaim 5 with AI. Thank you so much for for joining me on that free session. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we are just about out of time. So, and that's all I was wanting to share with you today. So let me just put Lisa's email. Whoops, not that one, that one. I love it. The best way to learn is to fail. Having all these micro failures. Okay, so again, here's Lisa's email address. If you want the handouts, just send her a message. She'll be glad to get those back to you. She has to wait for me to make the PDF and give it to her, but that's only going to take a few minutes. So really glad you were here today, everybody. We'll work on Lisa's microphone issue, whatever that is, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. So 2 Fridays from now, at the same time, and I think that's August 1st. Let me just quickly look. It is August 1st. So if you're not at the beach, right, or out doing something cool in the summer sun, come back. Be here. Yeah, be right here. You can always learn about the live streams that are coming up by visiting my profile on LinkedIn and clicking on events. But we also live stream on YouTube. And so if you're over there and if you're subscribed to the Cyber Risk Opportunities LLC channel, you can get notified over there too. Anyway, thanks everybody. See you in a couple of weeks.